Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. Bulls continue to reclaim lost ground as strong global cues lift the Lal Street once again. The Sensex gains over 500 points and Nifty puts on 200. PSU banks lead the charge. The Cabinet approves a 3 to 9% hike in the minimum support price of all mandated rabi crops on the back of rising input costs. The MSP for lentil has been increased by 500 rupees per quintal, the highest among the 6 crops. The MSP for wheat, which accounts for 70% of rabi crops, has been hiked by 110 rupees per quintal. Inflation continues to pinch rural India. FMCG sales dropped 14% in September. Companies like Dabur, Marico, V-Mart say entry-level products are seeing a decline in volume across all categories. Invesco is not the largest shareholder in Z anymore. The US-based fund house sells 5.5% of its stake via block deals, mops up close to $170 million. Around 5 crore 29 lakh shares change hands. The Z stock jumps 6%. The 12th edition of the Defence Expo kicks off in Gandhinagar. More than 1,300 Indian companies are showcasing their products. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh says more than 450 MOUs will be signed. 3,000 delegates from 70 countries are in attendance. Roger Binney is elected unopposed as new president of the Indian Cricket Board to succeed Saurav Ganguly. Secretary Jay Shah, Vice President Rajiv Shukla and all key office bearers also elected unopposed at the 36th Annual General Meeting of the BCCI. Well, let's start with the day's market action. The recovery continued on the Lal Street. Positive global cues did boost sentiment once again. The Sensex gained over 500 points and the Nifty jumped by nearly 200 points. Mid-caps did outperform the blue chips. The Nifty Bank Index gained nearly 400 points, with PSU banks leading the charge. Prashant joins us now to wrap up the market action for us. Prashant, global cues are certainly added to the fuel in our markets and finally closing up, and quite nicely so.
Strong session overall, nothing to complain after the strong handoff that we got from Wall Street. It's been very volatile. Global markets 2% up, 2% down. And then last night, of course, out of the US, you had another 2.5% higher move, but good close. The star of the session really was the PSU Bank Index, which now this week is up 8%. Names like PNB, SBI, Canara Bank, Indian Bank, you name it. That was really the flavor of today's session. But apart from PSU banks, media as a space did well. Z, of course, is a big contributor. Real estate, which has been coming off last few sessions, picked up pace, and the consumer index did quite well. SBI, naturally, on the Nifty was the top gainer. There were Adani Ports, Eicher, Nestle, ITC. As I said, consumer has come back into flavor. Reliance participated as well, and I think that it was a big constituent, big help for the broader index. Broader markets, even better as compared to the Nifty. Defense as a space has been doing well. There's a Defense Expo which is going on as well. HAL, BHEL, Data Patterns, a few. TVS Motor did well. You had Polycab, Adani Wilmar, Adani Transmission. The recent listing, Electronic Smart, is at a new high. Gujarat Alkali, NHPC, Phoenix. I can go on, but just highlighting the big volume-led movers that we had. The Nifty has closed exactly at the 50-day moving average, the simple 50-day average, and I think that becomes the first stop, the first level to really conclusively take out when we return tomorrow. There is no important data out of the US which could kind of, throw a spoke in the wheel. So hopefully the market in the US may continue to do well, which provides additional tailwind to the market here, which in any case has been doing relatively better. And I think markets will also closely watch central bank action in the UK. Whether they, as the Financial Times reported during the Asia session today, whether they are actually postponing the quantitative tightening program, not just because it's important for UK, but as a cue of what may possibly happen around the world later this year. Back to you.
All right, Prashant, many thanks for joining us. Decisions taken by the Cabinet, some relief coming in for farmers. The Union Cabinet has approved a hike in the minimum support price for all rabi crops between 3 to 9% for the 2023-2024 marketing season. The MSP for lentil has been increased by 500 rupees per quintal, making it the highest increase among the 6 crops, while MSP for wheat, which accounts for 70% of the rabi crops, has been hiked by 110 rupees a quintal. Manisha joins us now to break down the details for us. Manisha, what will this mean for the agri-economy and for farmers?
Well, yes, the MSP price increase has been between 3 to 9% and slightly delayed, by the way, because in last couple of years, we saw it being announced in the month of September. This time, it has been around mid-October when we finally have the MSP announcements coming from the government. And as you can see on that table stuck up for you, the least of MSP increase has been in chana, just about at 2%. This is because the government has enough buffer stock when it comes to chana. The max within pulses clearly has been for masoor, where the government does not have a buffer stock. And we have seen lower production as well. In the other food grain commodities, wheat at 5.5% was anticipated. And in any case, 70% is wheat of the food grains that is produced within the Rabi season there. And then you have edible oils, wherein mustard is looking at an MSP increase of nearly 8%. Remember, 50 to 60% of our edible oil requirement is imported. And the government has been talking about self-reliance in case of edible oil. So mustard at around nearly 8% of an increase in MSP does not come in as a surprise there. Safflower increase of 3.8% doesn't really move much because there's a very limited, less quantity of safflower that India really produces. And then you have barley at around 6%. As I said, the markets were almost anticipating it there. The CSEP had recommended a 3 to 9% of an increase in Rabi MSP, and that's exactly what we are seeing here. The farmers with the Kharif MSP hike were not very happy. They have been talking about higher input costs, whether it has been about seed, fertilizer, pesticides, transportation, labor, everything has been on a hike, and they wanted the MSP rate hike to incorporate all of these rises there. Chana is the largest Rabi public crop there, Rabi crop there, and we haven't seen much of an increase onto that one. The initial reactions on chana are also not so great coming in from the farmers. Chana could be losing out to other Rabi crops is what the street tells us. So that is something you'll need to watch out for. But having said that, at between 3 to 9% of CSEP recommendation, and what we've finally seen is pretty much what the street expected.
All right, Manisha, many thanks for joining us. Inflation continues to pinch rural India harder than urban areas. FMCG sales have dropped 14% in September. Companies like Dabur, Marico and V-Mart say entry-level products are seeing a decline in volume across all categories.
Yeah, so below 10 rupee price point contributes to almost more than 65-70% to our portfolio. And that's quite significant. And definitely as from rural market, we've seen that this is sort of slowed down, particularly in September. Actually, we've seen fantastic June, July and August. But September seems to have slowed down. So that's only a bit of concern.
Well, inflation there causing some hiccups as far as FMCG sales are concerned in rural India. In corporate news, shares of Zee Entertainment surging after Invesco offloaded 5.5% of its stake in the company via a block deal. Now, post the block deal, Invesco holds a little over 4.6% stake and is the second largest shareholder after LIC. The stake sale comes ahead of the Zee-Sony merger. There is a 180-day lock-in period for Invesco on a further stake sale. In the telecom space, the government has decided to extend the deadline for the submission of comments on the draft Telecom Bill 2022 from the 20th of October to the 30th of October. The extension comes after the department received requests from several stakeholders and industry associations. Remember, the current draft has sparked controversy over the expansion of telecommunication services to bring OTT platforms under its mandate and has also raised other data privacy concerns. Leading defence equipment manufacturers have gathered in Gujarat's Gandhinagar for the 12th edition of the Defence Expo. More than 1,300 Indian companies showcasing their products and innovations in the 5-day exhibition. Over 450 agreements are expected to be signed this time, which is almost double than the last edition.
This is a 5-day program where the initial 3 days are going to be business specific and the rest 2 days will be open for public. As of now, Indian companies are taking part in this particular event, and we have been told that more than 1,000 plus companies are going to take part. On the very first day, we have bilateral talks with Africa, and not just Africa, but Indian Ocean region countries are also taking part in this particular event. Tomorrow, on 19th of October, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to be a part of this event, and on a daily basis, we are going to see drone shows at the riverfront of Sabarmati. We are focusing on our indigenous platforms, and that's the reason why we have seen in number of months in the past that we have developed our own Tejas, we have developed our own Prachand, and a lot many indigenous platforms that have been launched in the recent months.
Mark II is not a Tejas, it is a new aircraft by design itself. it has a capabilities in terms of weapon carrying capabilities of 6.5 tons, whereas Mark 1 has got only 3.5 tons. This aircraft will be replacing all the existing Mirage 2000, Jaguar and MiG-29 aircrafts in the Indian squadrons. And we will be having a rollout of this aircraft in the next year. 2023 will be, end of the 2023 will be rolling out this aircraft.
Well, day one of the Defence Expo. UK's new Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt has tossed out all the tax cut presented by the Liz Truss government's mini-budget last month. That's not all. He's also proposed to redraw the scheme to cap household energy bills for 2 years. Hunt says that post-April, the scheme would target only the most vulnerable sections. Interestingly, the U-turn by the Liz Truss government on tax plans are similar to the plans that were laid out by Rishi Sunak, who lost out to Truss in the Tory leadership battle. Sanjay Suri wraps up all the action from London. Sanjay.
There's an expression we hear again and again these days in media, in politics. It's the expression screeching U-turn to describe what Liz Truss began to do, and that is now being undone. And that was undone right across the board on Monday, after the undoing bit by bit earlier. And nobody is missing the underlying fact here that Liz Truss has been turning away from her own policies, of course, that we see, but she is turning more and more to adopt those of Rishi Sunak. This is what everyone is saying, even if the Conservative Party leaders and the Truss government obviously is not saying it. And she is doing this without acknowledging this. These U-turns she's been making are not over some minor policy issues. These are over tax cuts, and those defined her whole campaign for the post of PM. They were at the heart of the debate with Rishi Sunak, and this debate was repeated at hustings after hustings. Rishi Sunak had argued all through that these tax cuts as proposed by Truss would be ruinous. He had argued that children and grandchildren would have to pay off the debt that these would bring on, but there perhaps he may have made an error. The boomerang did not need generations. It came in days and ended in 3 weeks.
Sanjay Suri, many thanks for joining us. A U-turn and more U-turns coming in there by the UK government. Jeremy Hunt undoing the tax cuts that had been brought in by Liz Truss. But coming up, 2 out of the 3 CEOs in India bracing for a global recession in the next 12 months. We speak with the CEO of KPMG in India about the KPMG CEO survey when we return.
To all the viewers of CNBC-TV18, wish you a very happy, prosperous and glowing Diwali.
ये लो अब खाओ कद्दू इसके चक्कर में 2000 का चालान लग गया।
बाइक इंश्योरेंस रिन्यू करते तो नहीं लगता ना पापा।
इंश्योरेंस कितनी महंगी है पता है? मैं यहाँ पैसे बचाऊं, सस्ते कद्दू के चक्कर में 15 किलोमीटर दूर जाऊं।
2000 रुपए का सस्ता कद्दू।
बाइक इंश्योरेंस महंगी पड़ रही है। प्रीमियम स्टार्टिंग एट जस्ट ₹1.5 per day on phone pay. Tension free insurance.
There's more of us in the squad today. There's a young one in the crew. There's a big boy in the gang. There's more color in the tribe. More styles in the wardrobe. We may look mean, but we're still the safest guys to be with. There's more punch, more legacy, more wow in us today. The original rock stars are rock stars still. But there's one thing we will be today and every day. New, now and forever. Tata Motors, new forever.
Give me red.
मिहिर और मीना की शादी होती है। मिहिर के बच्चों के बच्चे होते हैं।
बात अगर लंबे चलने की हो तो सिर्फ न्यू एवर रेडी अल्टिमा alkaline batteries that last up to 400% longer. New ever ready Ultima.
How about listening to global market maestros before crafting your investment strategy? How about getting deep insights into their businesses from top Indian honchos before putting your money on the line? How about making every trading day profitable with strategies from the market masters, macro pundits and chart wizards? Only one show gives you a head start to your trading day. Get ready to profit. Get ready for business with Bajar at these times on CNBC-TV18 and CNBC-TV18.com. Get up close with the movers and shakers of the Indian startup economy.
We don't have a mission, we have passion. We look at being able to back more than 500 to 600 brands across different categories.
I like to find a gap in the market and support brands that would require the springboard that I can bring in terms of my platform and see potential of growth.
India is the fastest growing digital payments ecosystem in any of the large economies. We are very excited about how we can ride that wave and how can we continue to be front runners.
India's most comprehensive daily show on startups. Startup Street celebrates 3 years of showcasing India's startup story.
Who said the markets can't be exciting? Who? Get the lowdown on the yays and mays. Straight from the top, catch market feels and news reels. Number crunch for the best of the bunch. The bigger Q for the richer you. Hot trends, big noise, what's viral and what's out. We'll give you the market goals you need to stay ahead. Mad about markets at these times.
Brought to you by InnoVT, purchase partner to every Indian.
कहीं जा रहे हो?
वो मोहित के घर मैच
रूम का एसी कौन बंद करेगा?
आप कहीं जा रहे हो?
नहीं।
तो कार इंश्योरेंस कौन बंद करेगा?
PolicyBazaar.com पर पे एज यू गो कार इंश्योरेंस। जब कार चले तो इंश्योरेंस ऑन रखो, वरना ऑज करो और 8,000 रुपए तक बचाओ।
Tata Power powering green mobility through pan-India EV charging infra setup, and it is a network of 2,400 plus public and semi-public EV chargers with another 1,400 plus chargers in various stages of installation. Now, install 21,000 plus home chargers and 240 plus bus charging points across India. Tata Power has collaborated with multiple partners across industries to enable the transition to clean mobility. The company has kicked off an ambitious nationwide plan of setting up EV charging stations from north to south, connecting Kashmir to Kanyakumari, and from east to west from Guwahati to Dwarka and Bikaner over the next 3 to 5 years.
Recession fears are looming large over the global economy. As per a survey conducted by KPMG between July and August of this year, 2 out of 3 CEOs in India are bracing for a recession in the next 12 months. However, 58% CEOs in India believe that the recession will be a short and mild one. 1 in every 2 CEOs say that they have a plan to deal with one. That's not all. CEOs in India are more confident about resilience of the global economy over the next 6 months compared with global CEOs. But that's not to say that CEOs in India are without their share of worries. Pandemic fatigue, inflation and anticipated recession. These are some of the key concerns inside boardrooms. Well, to take us through the key findings of the KPMG CEO survey, we're now joined by Nagpurwala, CEO of KPMG India. Thanks very much, Yezdi, for joining us here on the show. First, it's very clear through what the survey is showing up that Indian CEOs are far more confident at this juncture than their global counterparts. But when we talk about fears of a recession, Indian CEOs are talking about a global recession, right? Not a domestic recession.
No, thank you, Shirin. Thank you for having me. So you're absolutely right. The recession that we are talking about is actually a global recession, and the consequential impact one would have on India as such. So the CEOs in India, while they have a plan and they are confident of the resilience of their companies, etc., the recession is a global one.
Yes, and that's that is the big question at this point in time. Is this going to be a short and mild recession? Is it going to be a long and protracted recession? But CEOs polled believe that it's going to be short and mild, Yezdi.
That's correct. So while globally you have a larger proportion of people that we interviewed in the survey believe that there will be a recession, In India, that proportion is smaller. It's about 2/3. Globally, it was 86%. And while there is consensus that this recession it'll be shorter and milder as such.
Well, that certainly is the hope at this point in time. Let's see if it pans out that way. But yes, the survey says that Indian CEOs, 55% of those polled believe that they do have a plan to deal with the recession, were it to pan out in the way that they expect it to. What does that plan include? I mean, balance sheets are definitely in much better shape than the last financial crisis that the world went through. But what else are they going to leverage? What do they have as tools in their arsenal to be able to ride out the storm?
So, Shireen, it's a bit of a wait and watch, if you like. So CEOs in India they recognize it and they are watching it as it advances. And some of the aspects of the plan, including some of the CEOs that I've interacted with, it's around talent technology, where you start looking at talent differently and spend time more on trainings, etc., so that you reap the results once you.
So are you in an obtuse way saying that we're going to see a decline in hiring, the kind of hiring numbers that we were expecting? Is that going to see a significant decline or a moderate decline based on the conversations that you're having?
So not immediately. It's not as if CEOs have actually started watching for the decline and actioning it, but they are watching it, and they're spending their focus on other aspects as such. But if things do move in a certain direction, CEOs will start executing the plan.
Okay. I'm curious, when you ask what is concerning Indian CEOs, number one on that list is pandemic fatigue. I'm curious as to why that seems to be the top risk that Indian CEOs are focused on.
So it's actually a pandemic fatigue coupled with the economic outlook, coupled with the kind of challenges CEOs are facing with these days. These are all unprecedented, whether it's geopolitical aspects, whether it's inflation. India always had inflation, and now this is a global inflation phenomenon as such. The way talent is evolving, the hybrid model, etc., or the amount of focus on technology. These are all new challenges or opportunities as such, which is combining into fatigue as such. But one thing to note is CEOs are also watching their spend on ESG in light of the recession. And while it's all short term and they are refocusing on aspects of creating frameworks and getting their data sorted, which will help them in the medium term, but they are watching spends on ESG.
When you say watching spends on ESG, are you saying that the expected spends are likely to be put on hold, or are they likely to be moderated in comparison to what the earlier estimation was?
So I'd expect it to be moderated. I'd expect it to be refocused as such. But again, this is all very, very short term, and it will bounce back. The overall commitment of the industry and its leaders towards ESG, recognizing its benefits and the imperatives, that stays. So I don't see a situation where that will get impacted.
Since we're talking about reprioritization of spends, what about, adding capacity, expansion plans? What's the sense that you get on both those at this point in time? Is that likely to be put in pause mode, or are they yet to take a call on that and they're still waiting to see how the global environment turns?
So I think they're waiting to see how things pan out. As of now, the CEOs that we interviewed, they've not gone and revisited their budgets or their expense budgets as such. But they are watching and they are planning. and they'll start executing as we go along.
You know, we were just talking to FMCG players, and they were talking about how inflation is certainly biting the rural economy, rural parts of the country, where the impact is being felt much harder than urban pockets. And inflation clearly is one of the risks that Indian CEOs are focused on. How challenging is the inflation and the rate scenario? We are seeing rates move up globally and here in India as well. Both the mix, you know, how worried are CEOs about that?
So CEOs see this as precarious, if you like, especially for industry which is dependent on the global industry, or industry which is or sectors which are dependent on the currency. So currency fluctuations impact their business and things like that. So you are right. CEOs are watching those pieces, especially where you've got cross-country dependence.
Yep, there is caution, but it certainly is more optimistic when you compare sentiment in India versus sentiment globally at this point in time. That is the big takeaway from the KPMG CEO survey. They have, of course, polled Indian CEOs and they polled global CEOs as well. And, you know, one is not surprised with that, because what we are seeing across the globe at this point in time is inflation at multi-decadal highs, interest rates moving higher, and growth slowing down. In India so far, as you pointed out, yes, we have dealt with high inflation. So this is not significantly higher than what we're used to. And of course, we're not immune to the global environment, but still holding much better in comparison to what's happening in the rest of the world today on the back of domestic demand, which is still holding. As always, a pleasure. Yasdi, thanks very much for joining us here to take us through the findings of the KPMG India CEO survey. And that's it then on this edition of Business 360. Thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC-TV18. The news continues.